What is the value of a cash flow forecast? And is cash flow the same thing as profit? A forecast is a prediction of the future. A cash flow forecast is used to estimate when cash is expected to move in and out of a business. Businesses, just like individuals, need to keep track of their cash situation. We all need to have some idea of how much money is available to us now, what money is going in when, and what is coming out when. Think about John's story to illustrate this. John is single. He earns about £80,000 per year as a sales manager. John loves expensive shoes. He has a very big collection of them. Though his friends and family sometimes think that he's a bit mad, the fact is that he can afford them. In early January, John saw some £200 alligator skin shoes. The trouble was, in January, he had a bit of a cash flow crisis. John had spent a great deal of money at Christmas. He'd been diving for a week in the Caribbean and spent a lot on expensive meals. He didn't dare spend any more on his credit card, and there was only £200 in his bank account to see him through to payday. The problem John faces is not a lack of income, but rather a problem of timing. He might decide to delay this purchase or cash outflow until his monthly pay, a cash inflow, arrives in his bank account. The same sort of thing applies to any business. All businesses, no matter how profitable, should monitor and control cash flow. This is especially crucial for a start-up business. Starting up a business will involve considerable cash outflows, but to begin with, at any rate, cash inflows, sales, are likely to be modest. Sales will only build up if customers get to know about the business. This takes time. Let's look at an example. Danny and Vicky are entrepreneurial couples who are planning to open a bar and live music venue in their home city next year. As part of their business plan, they will create a cash flow forecast. Their cash inflows will include sales of drink and food, together with ticket sales. Their cash outflows will include the purchase of drink and food, hiring bands, and fixed costs, including things like maybe wages and rent. It's quite helpful to think of the cash flow forecast as showing what they hope their bank balance will be at the end of every month. The closing balance for each month, the amount of cash available, is calculated by doing a simple sum. Take the opening balance, which is the amount of cash in the bank if you like, at the start of the month, and add net cash flow. Net cash flow, remember, is total sales less total payments. These two, opening balance and net cash flow, added together is how the closing cash balance for each month is arrived at. The closing balance for one month is always the opening balance for the following month. Think about this question. Suppose Vicky and Danny buy the drinks that they will sell on credit. Once they place an order, Vicky and Danny have to pay for the drinks about a month after they are delivered. Does the closing balance for a particular month on their cash flow forecast show the profit for that month? The answer is no, almost certainly not. If you treat the closing balance for March as profit, you're not bringing the cost of drinks sold to customers but not yet paid for into the calculation. Remember, it's a cash flow forecast, showing how cash moves in and out of a business. Profit is usually calculated by deducting annual total costs, both cash and credit payments, from annual total sales, both cash and credit sales. A profit and loss account is a summary of income and expenses over the year. A cash flow forecast, on the other hand, is looking at a more detailed month-by-month picture. In a business involved in credit purchases or credit sales, a cash flow forecast cannot show monthly profit. Notice that Vicky and Danny will not be surprised or particularly worried if their monthly cash outflows exceed inflows in the early stages of their business. After all, it will take a while for locals to hear about their club and for them to build a reputation. Even after their first year or two, there may be a part of the year where the business is quiet. They might have a negative cash flow. During this quiet period in particular, they need to think about managing cash flow. For example, they may ask the bank for an overdraft, which will allow them to spend more than they have coming in for a limited period of time. As sales pick up, their cash flow will become positive again, hopefully. Managing cash flow is not just about setting up an overdraft. There are also ways in which the business can seek to prevent or limit the possibility of being in a negative cash flow position in the first place. So, remember that cash flow and profit are two different things. It's not impossible for a business to be highly profitable, but also have a cash flow problem. To take an easy example of this, think about markets where demand is very seasonal. For instance, greeting cards or ice cream. Over the year as a whole, a company trading in one of these markets may have sales considerably in excess of costs. But for a large part of the year, its cash inflows will probably be less than cash outflows. In other words, it will need to think about carefully managing cash flow to avoid running out of cash. When invoices for fixed costs have to be paid, creditors will rarely be prepared to wait for months until your cash flow improves so you have enough cash to pay your bills. Cash flow forecasts have limitations. The estimated sales and expenses figures are just that, estimates. Even when managers have past experience to draw on, there is no guarantee that forecast cash inflows or outflows will be the same as the actual figures. Startup entrepreneurs like Danny and Vicky have to guess what figure to use for sales and variable costs, such as stock. But I hope you can see that cash flow forecasts have lots of advantages too. Producing a number of them showing best case and worst case scenarios will enable the entrepreneur to look at a range of possible outcomes. It's better to recognize the likelihood of cash flow problems in advance and devise a plan to improve cash flow than have to unexpectedly manage a cash shortage. Remember, a forecast is included in the business plan. Banks are far more likely to provide capital to an entrepreneur that has done this kind of financial planning. The banks will look at forecast figures to help decide whether a business has the ability to generate enough cash to keep afloat. To sum up then, a cash flow forecast is used to estimate when cash is expected to move in and out of a business. It does not on its own really indicate profitability. But although a cash flow forecast is merely an educated guess, it is a very useful planning tool, bearing in mind that any business without a healthy flow of cash will not exist for very long. Have a look at these questions. Question 1. Can you identify 2 good reasons for drawing up a cash flow forecast? Question 2. Assuming that Danny and Vicky are currently purchasing drinks and food for resale on a cash basis every month, can you explain the advantage of buying this stock on credit instead? Question 3. How might a business like Danny and Vicky's improve its cash flow? Suggest as many options as you can. To find out more, visit learnloads.com.